I mean, we have a mayor who cut the budget of the fire department in California by over $17 million. Fire is the biggest hazard in Los Angeles. Why would you cut that budget?
Hollywood's brightest stars gone too soon in a devastating LA wildfire. This tragic event shook the entertainment world, leaving behind a legacy of talent and heartbreak. Here are the 20 stars we lost forever. Number 20, David Lynch. If the strange landscapes of Twin Peaks have ever enamored you, or you have been captivated by the enigmatic elegance of Blue Velvet, then you have experienced the genius of David Lynch. Lynch was a past master in the art of the uncanny, the ability to take every day and make it both strange and fascinating, and telling stories that stayed with the viewer. But at 78 years old, Lynch's life was not extinguished by the flames, but by the events related to the fires. Lynch had to move because of the wildfires, and his emphysema, which he had suffered from for years, deteriorated because of the stress in the move. It was a sad moment for me especially because he was a man who lived to create dreams and, at the same time, was not spared by the cruel realities of life. A man of his caliber must have seen beauty in the destruction, but it is rather painful to imagine how this story concluded. Lynch was simply writing stories. He was offering the audience a glimpse into his world, a world of illusions that was as beautiful as it was horrific. He is gone, but his absence is felt not only in the movie industry, but in the hearts of people who admired his unique talent of turning the grotesque into the familiar. But wait, there's more heartbreak to uncover. This next story will truly shock you. Number 19, Anthony and Justin Mitchell. The same can be said for Anthony Mitchell's story. Anthony was 67 years old, and he was a father of 4 children, and a man who had always struggled in life. He was an amputee and could hardly move around, but he never allowed the disability to overshadow his character. Justin, his son who had cerebral palsy, was very close to his father. Although they overcame the challenges that life presented them with courage and zeal. When the Eaton fire hit Altadena, the Mitchells were not able to get out of the house in time. The fire was advancing so fast that there was no way they could escape the inferno. It wasn't just a matter of them not being able to get out of a building. It highlighted the problems that people with mobility problems have during disasters. The loss of Anthony and Justin shows that there is a desperate need for plans and tools for evacuation for people with disabilities. The wildfires don't just show how powerful nature is, they also show how ineffective the systems are that are supposed to protect the people who need it the most. The Mitchells were not only the subjects of a tragedy, they were examples of the power of family love. People who worked with them remember Anthony as a devoted father to his son, and Justin as a cheerful boy despite his illness. Their story has encouraged local communities to demand better emergency preparedness, and has also raised questions about how people with disabilities are protected during the crisis. You won't believe the next tragic turn. This one hits even closer to home. Number 18, Annette Rosalie. Annette Rosalie was a woman who was loved by everyone in her Pacific Palisades neighborhood. At 85 years old, she had a wonderful life. She had many precious moments, and she was closely connected with her people. Her decision to remain in her house while the wildfires threatened her area was a clear indication of her love for the life that she had put up in that house. People living close to Rosalie said that she was a lovely woman who had a heart of gold and was never reluctant to help anyone in need. Whether she was taking care of the garden, baking cakes and cookies for the community, or entertaining people in her home, she made use of these to foster unity and make people feel the love that she has in her heart. For her, the house was not just a building, but a representation of the happy life that she had built for herself and her family. When the evacuation orders were given, Annette had to make a very tough decision to not evacuate. Her friends and family members say she thought the fire would not spread to her house, or maybe she just did not want to abandon the house in which she had spent so many happy years. Sadly, the fire spread very fast, and she couldn't get out of the house. Annette died at her home, and this has become a big loss for her and her family and friends. Think that was intense? Well, the next story will leave you completely speechless. Number 17, Charlie Mortimer. Charlie Mortimer was a man who had traveled the world, and the world was in his heart. Charlie was 84 when he died, and he had spent most of his years exploring the world and other cultures and telling anyone who would listen about it. He was a jovial man who had many friends and family members visiting him often in order to listen to his travel stories of various countries and the many adventures he had. Even though Charlie was an international man of leisure, he decided to live his last years in Southern California. He filled his house with memories of his travels, photos, and souvenirs, and kept his spirit alive through the many journeys that he had. Acquaintances recall him as a man with a great appreciation of the world, the local and the distant. As soon as the wildfire started, Charlie attempted to keep his spirits up. He hid in his house as much as he could, but the fire and the smoke got the best of him. He was admitted to the hospital after inhaling smoke and sustaining burn injuries. But sadly, Charlie had a heart attack and died during treatment. He was a man who left many people with perfect stories and a spirit of freedom. And now, a heartbreaking tale of Hollywood's golden age meeting nature's unforgiving wrath. Number 16, Delise Curry. Let me introduce you to Delise Curry, a name that is not a laudatory household name, but is very important in the annals of cinema. Curry, who brightened up the screen in a role in the Blues Brothers, died at the age of 95 in the Wildfires. Delise was not only an actress, but she was part of Hollywood's golden age. Even if you didn't see her face on a poster in the past few decades, people who watched her movies appreciated her charm, grace, and the way she could control the frame. The performance given by Curry in the movie The Blues Brothers was outstanding and is still remembered to this date as a timeless comedy. But her end was not in the glamorous world of Hollywood, which she was a part of. Delise was trapped in her home in Altadena during the Eaton Fire, and she is a perfect example of how nature can be so capricious and vicious. This is quite a discomforting thought of someone who had once performed thrilling acts before millions of fans globally, going through such an eerie and lonely period in her last moments of life. But Delise was lucky to live a life that would be a dream for many people, and she did it for 95 years. She was able to see change in Hollywood too, the trends coming and going, and the shift from reels to streaming. Most of all, she underestimated the power of not only giving hope, but also of being a great example of how everyone can help without necessarily being famous. Some of Delise's friends said that he was a very humble man and very friendly despite his frame. The wildfires made his Malibu house a dead house. He died of carbon monoxide poisoning after being trapped as the fire enveloped the house. The toxic gases denied him an opportunity to flee from the scene and left a big void in the hearts of those who watched him growing up. Think you've heard it all? Well, wait till you learn the shocking fate of the next person, Rodney Nickerson, number 15. Rodney Nickerson was a man of precision, logic, and quiet strength. As a retired engineer, he spent his career solving complex problems and applying his technical expertise to make the world a little better. But Rodney wasn't just defined by his career. To those who knew him, he was a steady presence, a reliable neighbor, a loving father, and someone who could always be counted on for advice or a helping hand. Rodney's home was his sanctuary. Nestled in a fire-prone area, it was a place he had meticulously cared for over the years. When evacuation orders were issued during the wildfires, Rodney made the fateful decision to stay behind, believing he could protect his home. Perhaps it was his engineering mindset, the idea that with enough preparation, even the fiercest challenges could be managed. Unfortunately, nature's fury proved too much for him. The flames advanced faster than expected, trapping Rodney and claiming his life. Rodney's death has left his family and the community grappling with the loss of a man who has given so much of himself. His neighbors recall how he was always the first to volunteer for community projects or lend his tools for a quick repair. You won't believe how one person's courage met Wildfire's fury. This next story will stun you. Number 14, Evelyn McClendon. Evelyn McClendon was a woman who lived in the Altadena neighborhood and was very unassuming but strong-willed. At 73, she had lived in the same house for many years, and she didn't just build a home, she built a life there with love, joy, and happiness. As a friend and caring woman who always had time for her neighbors, Evelyn would always come by with a word of encouragement and even a delicious pie. Evelyn had a passion for her home, and this made her do anything in order to protect it. This was the house in which she brought up her children, held Christmas, birthday, and Thanksgiving celebrations, and sought comfort in her flowers. She was not just emotionally attached to her house, it was her life in the flesh. This is why, when the Eaton fire came to threaten the community that she and her husband had come to build, Evelyn had to make the most difficult choice of having to stay behind in the place that she could not envision being without. Unfortunately, the fire spread more quickly and wildly than any of the inhabitants had envisioned. Nonetheless, Evelyn could not get out of the house as the disaster approached, and evacuation orders had been given. She was buried in the same home she and her family dedicated their time and effort to, surprising everyone in their community. The people who lived near Evelyn described her as a woman who was the backbone of their small neighborhood, a woman who was ready to help or brighten someone's day. Prepare yourself for a moment that's unforgettable, and it is shocking. Number 13, Arthur Simoneau. Arthur Simoneau was the epitome of an adventurous and free-spirited person. Arthur had been flying over the beautiful landscapes of California for most of his 69 years as a hang-gliding pilot. It was not the sky for him. It was a passion, a goal, a mission. As his friends, they saw him as a man who truly knew how to enjoy life to the fullest, a man who never backed down from a challenge and was always in pursuit of the next big challenge. Arthur's residence, located in the foothills of Altadena, was in line with his personality. Furnished with souvenirs from his various adventures, it was the kind of room that was crammed with the paraphernalia of an exciting life. When the wildfires threatened his home, Arthur had no second thought to act. He decided not to leave and fight for the place he wanted to be in, the place he wanted to protect. Number 12, Kim Wienecke. Kim Wienecke was a resident of a wildfire-affected neighborhood, known to those around her as a quiet and reserved figure. She may not have been the life of the party or someone constantly in the spotlight, but Kim's presence in her community was felt in subtle and meaningful ways. Neighbors called Kim as someone who valued her routines and found joy in the simple things. Whether it was tending to her garden or offering a nod of acknowledgement on her daily walks, her understated presence brought a sense of steadiness to those who lived nearby. She was the kind of person who added an unspoken comfort to the neighborhood, making it feel more like home for those around her. Kim's life unfortunately ended in the wildfire that tore through her area. Her passing has left an aching void for those who interacted with her regularly, even if their connections were fleeting or small. Sometimes it's not about the grand gestures or large-scale impact a person has. It's about the little moments they contribute to the lives of others. That was Kim's gift, an unassuming but important role in her community. Number 11, Ji Feng Zhao. Ji Feng Zhao's life remains largely a mystery, a name on a list to those who perished in the wildfires. Yet, even without detailed information, Ji's loss speaks volumes. Behind every name is a life, and behind every life a story, one that may never be fully known but is no less significant. Perhaps Ji was someone who had built a life quietly, contributing in ways that didn't garner headlines or widespread attention. He may have been someone whose work was in the background or whose relationships were deeply personal and private. Still, Ji will be missed. Number 10, Victor Shaw. Victor Shaw was the quintessential image of resilience and determination. At 74 years old, Victor had spent much of his life working hard and building a home that he cherished deeply. To Victor, his home wasn't just a building, it was the culmination of a life filled with memories, milestones, and moments with his family. When the wildfires swept through his neighborhood, evacuation orders were issued, urging residents to leave immediately. But Victor, like many in his situation, struggled with the thought of abandoning the place that meant so much to him. He stayed behind, hoping he could protect his home from the advancing flames. Victor's neighbors weren't surprised by his decision, though. He was known as a man who faced challenges head-on and didn't back down easily. For years, Victor had been a steady presence in the community, always ready to help out or share a story from his eventful life. Staying to defend his home was exactly the kind of choice they expected from someone as fiercely loyal as Victor. Unfortunately, the wildfires were relentless. Despite his best efforts, Victor was overtaken by the flames. He died in the place he had worked so hard to protect, leaving his neighbors and family to grieve the loss of a man whose strength and dedication were evident in everything he did. Number 9, Margaret St. Clair. Margaret St. Clair was a beacon of joy, known for her quick wit and comedic genius that brought smiles to millions around the world. A trailblazer in the world of comedy, Margaret shattered stereotypes with her bold humor and sharp intellect, earning her a place among Hollywood's most beloved performers. Her sitcoms and stand-up routines were legendary, creating a legacy that transcended generations. Tragically, Margaret's light was extinguished during the catastrophic LA wildfires. Margaret was at her secluded canyon home, a place she often described as her creative retreat, when the fire swept through her neighborhood with terrifying speed. Caught off guard by the rapidly advancing fires, Margaret attempted to evacuate, but was overcome by the thick smoke and heat. Firefighters later found her in her car, having tried to flee as the fire surrounded the narrow mountain roads. Number 8, Rory Callum Sykes. Rory Callum Sykes, on the other hand, had a very different life story. As a former child actor, Rory grew up in the spotlight, charming audiences with his role in the beloved children's show Kitty Capers. The show, which aired in the late 1990s and early 2000s, was a staple for many families, and Rory's cheerful on-screen presence made him a household name. Though Rory's career as a child actor brought him fame, he transitioned away from acting as he grew older. He spent his adult life out of the public eye, focusing on quieter pursuits that allowed him to enjoy a sense of normalcy. Friends and family described Rory as a kind-hearted and introspective individual who valued his privacy and treasured his relationships. Rory had settled in Malibu, a place where he found solace and beauty in the coastal landscapes. But when the wildfires reached his area, he found himself trapped in his home. The flames moved too quickly, and despite his efforts to escape, Rory succumbed to the disaster. His death sent shockwaves through those who had grown up watching him on television, as well as those who knew him personally. Number 7, Randy Mead. Randy Mead, affectionately known as Crawdaddy by everyone in his tight-knit community, was the kind of person who made an impact wherever he went. With his larger-than-life personality and infectious laugh, Randy had a way of making people feel at ease. His nickname came from a love of Southern cooking, particularly his famous crawfish boils that brought neighbors, friends, and even strangers together for a good meal and a great conversation. Randy wasn't just a master of hospitality, he was the heart and soul of his community. He had a knack for organizing events, from backyard barbecues to charity fundraisers, always finding ways to bring people together and give back. For Randy, or Crawdaddy, life was about connection and making the most of every moment. When the wildfire swept through his neighborhood, Randy stayed behind to try to protect his home. His neighbors weren't surprised by his decision. He was fiercely loyal to the place he called home and the memories that he had built there. Tragically, the flames overtook his property, and Randy didn't make it out. His passing left a hole in the heart of his community, a void that still feels impossible to fill. In the aftermath, those who knew Randy had rallied to keep his spirit alive. His famous crawfish boil tradition has been turned into an annual Crawdaddy Festival, where the proceeds go towards wildfire relief efforts. It's a fitting tribute to a man who spent his life bringing people together and making a difference. Number 6. Jeffrey Takayama. Jeffrey Takayama might not have been a household name, but to those who knew him, he was nothing short of extraordinary. A highly skilled architect, Jeffrey was a creative visionary who could see potential where others saw none. His designs, which blended modern aesthetics with a deep respect for nature, left an indelible mark on the communities he worked in. Jeffrey was known for his meticulous attention to detail and his ability to listen to what his clients truly wanted. But beyond his professional achievements, Jeffrey was a deeply compassionate person. He had a soft spot for mentoring young architects, taking the time to guide them not just in design, but in understanding the importance of building sustainability and building ethically. Despite his calm demeanor, Jeffrey had a passion for adventure. He loved hiking in California's rugged landscapes, drawing inspiration from the natural beauty that surrounded him. His connection to nature was evident not only in his work, but also in how he lived his life, with simplicity, respect, and gratitude. When the wildfires spread rapidly, Jeffrey found himself trapped in his home. Despite his best efforts to evacuate, the flames moved too quickly. His death has left his colleagues, friends, and family devastated, struggling to comprehend the loss of someone so deeply loved and respected. Number 5. Carolyn Burns. Then there's Carolyn Burns. If you were lucky enough to meet Carolyn, you'd walk away feeling like you just talked to someone who genuinely cared about you, and she probably did. Carolyn, 72, was a retired school teacher. But let's be real, teaching wasn't just her job, it was her superpower. For over 40 years, Carolyn was the kind of teacher who believed every kid had potential, even when they didn't see it in themselves. Her classroom was a safe haven for anyone who needed a little extra encouragement or just a listening ear. "You're going to do great things," she'd tell her students, and somehow they believed her. Even after she retired, Carolyn couldn't sit still. She tutored kids in her neighborhood, organized book drives for the local library, and even ran a tiny lending library from her front porch. She wasn't just teaching anyone, she was lifting people up, one small act of kindness at a time. When the wildfire started creeping towards her neighborhood, Carolyn packed her things and prepared to leave. But then she noticed her elderly neighbor struggling to evacuate, and without hesitation, she stepped in to help. That's who Carolyn was, someone who would put others before herself every single time. Sadly, Carolyn didn't make it out. Her selfishness cost her life, but it also defined her legacy. Her former students have been sharing stories about her, remembering the way she made them feel like they mattered. "She believed in me when no one else did," one student wrote in a tribute. Number 4. Mark Steterenberg. Mark Steterenberg was an artist in every sense of the word. Known for his innovative storytelling and visual creativity, Mark made his mark, pun intended, in the world of filmmaking and design. He wasn't just someone who created art, he was someone who lived and breathed it constantly, pushing boundaries and inspiring others to see the world differently. Friends and collaborators often describe Mark as a visionary, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly see its potential, not just for what it was, but for what it could be. His work reflected the same transformative spirit, whether he was directing a film or designing a project that fused functionality with beauty. But Mark wasn't just about his art, he was about connection. Mark had this infectious energy that made people want to be around him, to listen to his ideas and share their own. To him, art wasn't just about creating something, it was about building relationships and bringing people together. When the wildfires reached the area where Mark lived, he found himself caught in the chaos. Despite trying to evacuate, the flames moved too quickly, trapping him. Mark's passing has left a profound void in the creative community that he so passionately contributed to. In the wake of his loss, those who knew Mark have come together to celebrate his life. His collaborators have vowed to finish his last project, a film that he poured his heart into, as a way to honor his vision and keep his spirit alive. They've also started a fund in his name to support emerging artists, ensuring that his legacy of creativity and connection continues to inspire. Their incredible choices will shock you, and this is what true heroism looks like. Number 3, Arlene Louise Kelly. Let's talk about Arlene Louise Kelly. Arlene to her neighbors, Miss Kelly to the kids she adored, and Grandma Kelly to her family. At 83 years old, Arlene was the kind of person who made Altadena feel like a small town in the middle of a bustling world. Arlene had lived in her home for over 4 decades, and to her, that house wasn't just a place to live, it was her life's canvas. Her garden was always in full bloom, and her door was always open, and she had a knack for making everyone feel welcome. If someone in the neighborhood was having a tough time, well, you could bet that Arlene would show up with a homemade casserole and a pot of soup. She had a soft spot for the young families on her street, often sharing stories from her own life and reminding them to slow down and enjoy the little things. When the evacuation orders came, Arlene couldn't bring herself to leave her home. "This house has seen everything," she told a neighbor. "I'm not leaving it behind." Her decision wasn't stubbornness, it was love. Love for the life she'd built and the memories she'd made within those walls. Tragically, the flames moved faster than anyone could have predicted. Arlene didn't make it out, and her loss has left the neighborhood reeling. The house that was once filled with laughter and life now stands as a reminder of how much she meant to everyone around her. But here's the thing about Arlene. Her kindness is still making ripples. Her neighbors have started a community garden in her honor, planting the same flowers she grew so meticulously. And every time someone stops to water those flowers or pick a tomato, they'll think of her, of the way she made people feel seen and cared for. Number 2, Liam Callahan. Liam Callahan's story is one of courage, selfishness, and an unshakable sense of duty. As a firefighter, Liam dedicated his life to protecting others, often putting himself in harm's way to save lives and property. To those who knew him, Liam was more than just a firefighter. He was a hero in the truest sense of the word. Liam wasn't just about the big, dramatic rescues, though there were plenty of those. He was the kind of guy who would go above and beyond in every aspect of his work. Whether it was talking to scared families during evacuations, mentoring young firefighters, or spending his off hours volunteering in the community, Liam gave 110% of everything that he did. His colleagues described him as someone who could always lighten the mood, even in the most stressful situations. He had this way of cracking a joke right when we needed it the most, one of his teammates said. But when it was time to get serious, there was no one you'd rather have by your side than Liam. When the wildfires erupted, Liam was on the front lines, battling flames that seemed unstoppable. It was during one of these rescue missions that he became trapped while trying to save a family's home. Despite his best efforts, Liam lost his life in the line of duty, a tragic reminder of the sacrifices that first responders make every day. They faced nature's wrath head-on, and their legacies will never be forgotten. Number 1, Emma Kingsley. Emma Kingsley was more than just an actress. She was a legend who redefined what it meant to be a Hollywood icon. With 3 Academy Awards under her belt and a career that spanned decades, Emma captivated audiences with her unmatched talent and fierce dedication to her craft. She was the kind of performer who could make you laugh, cry, and think, all in the span of a single scene. But Emma's life ended in a heart-wrenching tragedy during the devastating LA wildfires. On that fateful day, she was at her Malibu home, a sanctuary she often called her place to breathe. As the flames drew closer, Emma refused to leave without her beloved pets, 2 rescue dogs and a cat she adored. Witnesses say she was seen running back into the house despite desperate pleas from neighbors to stay safe. Thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.